Hey, do you remember this?
Some of the top musicians in the United States are coming together to support the victims of the wildfires in California. And while Trump spreads misinformation, I bet he wishes that his inauguration lineup looked like this. The concert has become so large that they're now breaking it into two different venues. They're going to have it at the Intuit Forum and the Kia Center in Los Angeles.
Ooh.
Here are some of the artists that are going to be performing. Lady Gaga, Billie Eilish, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Green Day, and Joni Mitchell. It will also include Stevie Nicks, Katy Perry, Pink, and Earth, Wind, and Fire. It will also include Rod Stewart, Sting, Jelly Roll, and Gwen Stefani. And this concert is going to be aired on almost every single streaming platform, from Apple to Prime, Netflix, Paramount Plus, and many more. The concert will be taking place on January 30th.
Greetings, and welcome back to Wolf Kage Los Angeles. Let's rewind the clock just a few months. Do you remember the massive fires that tore through parts of LA? I'm talking about blazes in Palisades and Altadena, fires so intense they painted our skies orange and forced entire communities to evacuate. The Palisades fire alone scorched over 1,200 acres, pushing firefighters to their limits. Meanwhile, in Altadena, flames crept dangerously close to homes, schools, and hiking trails. These weren't just brush fires, they were wake-up calls. Now, think back. Do you remember that big concert that was thrown for the fire victims? There were celebrities, there were influencers, it was music, millions of dollars in donations. Sounds good on paper, right? But here's the question, and it's always the question that I always have: where did the money go? Who actually got help? And why aren't we hearing about the rebuild? Why aren't we hearing about the recovery? The aftermath. Well, we're pulling back the curtain on all of it right now, so let's talk about it. It all seemed so exciting at first, didn't it? A once-in-a-lifetime concert. Legendary artists, all promising to light up the stage and raise millions for the victims of Palisades and Altadena. The energy was electric. The hype seemed real, and the promises, well, they sounded golden. But then the politics started to creep in. There was that guy on stage. Remember, he used the mic not to confront the victims, but to take shots at Donald Trump. He claimed Trump was doing nothing while Democratic leadership was, quote, stepping up. But here's the thing. What were they really stepping up to do? Because while the smoke was still in the air, Governor Gavin Newsom stepped in front of cameras talking about rebuilding. But he wasn't talking about rebuilding homes for the families who had just lost everything. No, he was talking about constructing kind of like a brand new city, a planned community. Now think about that. A fire happens, then suddenly there's a plan for a brand new development. That's not quick thinking. That's a blueprint already in the drawer. And then there is the question of, where was Mayor Bass during all of this? Vacationing? Where was Vice President Kamala Harris? Front row at the concert. While real people were digging through ashes, they were posing for cameras. You know, another factor that was never spoken about on mainstream media was all the fraud that was going on. Mind you, this is a situation where your government leaders should be on the forefront, not only warning people as to what's going on, but letting people know that they're actively looking into it and they will find the people who are committing the fraud. Instead, They were giving empty platitudes, pretending as if they were doing something while silencing the people who are actually going through the tragedy. Because if those people would be able to speak, the whole world would realize nothing is being done for them. Check this clip out.
The Wilkins applied for disaster assistance from FEMA, carefully keeping a file and notebook with important information they'd need throughout the process.
So as far as you know, you've done everything you need to do. Help is on the way.
Help is on the way.
But help never came. So the Wilkins followed up with a FEMA representative at a disaster center and learned the personal information they'd used to set up their FEMA account had been changed.
She says, what's your social security number? Okay. What's your date of birth? Okay. And your address is such and such. And I said, no. Is your phone number start with area code such and such? And I said, no.
What's going through your mind? Yikes.
Yeah, WTF.
Right. Well, and by that time, too, we had already heard some of our other friends whose accounts were the same way. And we just go, oh, not us, too.
The Wilkins were told their account was locked due to suspected identity fraud. They've spent months waiting for FEMA to resolve their case, and it's unclear whether they will ever get any money.
You know, this was a moment when government leaders should have been visible, should have been vocal, should have been vigilant. They should have been standing front and center, warning communities, opening investigations, and promising to track down those taking advantage of the chaos. But what do we get instead? Karen Bass with her empty speeches, at least the ones she would even give, scripted sympathy, and a whole lot of camera-ready concern. Meanwhile, those actually suffering, the families who lost their homes, their memories, their entire lives, silenced. Not by chance, but by design. Because once again, if they had been given the platform to speak freely, the truth would have hit the airwaves like wildfire. You know, these fires didn't just burn homes. They lit up something far deeper. For a lot of people, this was a wake-up call. A bright red flare revealing what I can only describe as a sinister plan unfolding in real time. Take this, for example. It came out that Mayor Karen Bass, yes, the same Mayor Karen Bass who disappeared during the crisis, had deleted text messages tied to the very events unfolding in her own backyard. Now, ask yourself, why would she do that? Why would an innocent, compassionate public servant delete texts during a community-wide tragedy? The answer is simple. Because something shady was on the horizon. Something shady was going on. And here's the twist. In the past, this kind of thing would have slipped right through the cracks. No questions asked, no accountability, but not this time, because now people are awake. People are asking questions. People are watching these politicians like hawks, and we want answers. Let's take a closer look at this.
Breaking news. The LA mayor's office releases Karen Bass's texts during the fire disaster. What messages were sent as the Pacific Palisades burned?
Good evening. Welcome to Fox 7 News at 5, simulcast on Fox 11 and Fox 11 Plus. I'm Alex Michelson.
And I'm Christine Devine. Fox 11's Christy Fajardo has been pressing the mayor on this issue from the beginning. She joins us now live downtown. Christy.
Yeah, Christine, we've been trying to get the text messages for more than 2 months. We were told that they had been auto-deleted by her phone, but the city was able to recover them, and we got them a little over 2 hours ago. And what they show is that as the Palisades fire was raging and the mayor was at a reception in Ghana and later on a plane, she received messages from the White House, U.S. senators, mayors from other cities, as well as her staff. The first message from Celine Cordero, the mayor's deputy chief of staff, comes in about 11:48 a.m. our time. The mayor is still in Ghana. Cordero texts on phone with Chief Crowley now. 2 significant fires in city now. She will call you, Mayor. Hollywood, Pacific Palisades, potential evacuations, significant resources, 40-mile winds, 100 acres affected in the next 20 minutes. Cordero follows up less than an hour later with a group chat. Palisades fire is now 200 acres. An evacuation order is being prepared to go out. The Palisades Recreation Center will be used as an evacuation center. Governor will be at command post in 2.5 hours. Crowley said homes will be lawsuit. Crowley and I meeting at EOC in a minute. She also texts 25,000 people expected to be evacuated in city thus far. Then just before 2 p.m., the county supervisor who represents the Palisades, Lindsay Horvath, writes, reaching out about Palisades fire. I understand our county fire department is supporting, and our Office of Emergency Management has been in touch with city staff. Also, do you need additional help support? Anything you want to put on our radar at this time? The mayor responds, thanks for asking. I think we are good. I'll call you in the AM. At about 8 p.m. our time, Cordero's text messages get much more dire. She writes, we will be expanding the evac zone all the way to the Santa Monica city limits and all the way to the top of Mandeville Canyon. About 2.5 hours later, she writes, from LAFD, approximately 3,000 acres of burn, possibly more. All aircraft grounded due to wind and visibility. Evac orders to border of city of Santa Monica. Multiple civilian victims injured. TBD. Press conference at 8 a.m. at Zuma Beach. By then, the fire had exploded. Cordero writes, LAFD update from Pacific Palisades. The winds have increased significantly with gusts in the Palisades above 70 miles an hour. Fire department is essentially in life-saving mode, and structures are a secondary concern at this point. Unofficial estimate is 200 homes burned. Our deployment stands at 6 plus 72, and we are in the process of swapping out day watch for night watch. Now, some of the text messages were redacted, and we don't know what conversations were had by phone. We do know that the mayor had access to a military phone while she was on that flight back from Ghana. But I can tell you, at least from the text messages that we have seen so far, it seems like the first mention of water in the Palisades was not made until the morning of January 8th. And that's when the mayor got a text message from the CEO of the LADWP apologizing for missing her call. She also sent a very lengthy text message, but she did say we were able to open refill stations from our system for fire engines, and we sent all our water trucks to Palisades to give them more sources of water. The mayor wrote back, this is great news. Thank you. Landing in 4 hours.
Okay, so you saw that. We'll probably not hear much more about that ever again because they have basically wiped that out of the history books. And Karen Bass is now just having steak dinners in Malibu like nothing happened. The audacity. But now let's fast forward from January to now. Back here in May. That big FireAid concert series, the one that promised to bring hope, to bring healing and millions in relief, is now being exposed for what it really was. A scam. A fraud. A feel-good spectacle with no follow-through. Money was raised. All right, millions of dollars were raised. But the people who actually needed it, the displaced families, the burned out business owners, the elderly who lost everything, they saw nothing. Instead, we got photo ops, we got headlines, we got a whole lot of smoke and mirrors. The next two clips I want to show you will lay it out plain and simple, what really went on behind the scenes. If you're not outraged by this, if this doesn't stir something inside of your gut, then honestly, I don't know what will. Because this isn't just about a concert. It's about betrayal. Plain and simple. Check this out.
I don't know if you remember, but like right after the Palisades fire, there was that big concert that I was so upset they didn't invite Heidi to perform at, the LA FireAid concert. Do you remember that? And some of you remember, I'm sure. Well, guess what? They raised $100 million and they haven't said where any of that money went. And they've been asked for accounting, So first off, I'm glad Heidi didn't go waste her time performing for money that actually nobody knows where it went. Think about that, $100 million raised for residents, community things, and funds that are supposed to help with Palisades, and there's no accounting or where the money went. They're not telling anyone. Is that? I mean, I haven't even had my coffee yet. What?
benefit concert might be one of the biggest scams in disaster fundraising history. And as usual, I'm bringing the receipts. First off, according to reports, the FireAid benefit concerts raised over $100 million, supposedly for LA fire victims. But since then, residents have been asking, where did all the money go?
$100 million raised for residents, community things, and funds that are supposed to help with the Palisades, and there's no accounting or where the money went. They're not telling anyone.
Let's figure this out. So, according to the FireAid website, it says that all direct donations will be distributed under the advisement of the Annenberg Foundation. According to the IRS 990 form, the Annenberg Foundation is a 501c3 based in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, in this lovely office building. One massive red flag right away is that only 33% of their annual expenses goes towards actual charity programs. The rest goes to administrative costs like executive compensation. And if you look at the numbers, they treat you pretty good over there, starting with top dog Cynthia Kennard, who's making $750,000 plus another 6 figures in bonuses, which is basically almost 7 figures just for one person there. Jeez. Here is Cynthia, aka Cinny, hanging out with Gavin Newsom, discussing or strategizing about things like how to solve homelessness, among other things. This is one of those if you know situations. Anyway, just to give you a point of comparison with another nonprofit, Doctors Without Borders, they spend almost 90% of their money on actual programs versus less than 1% on administrative costs. Local journalists have also been asking, where's the money? They found, quote, the FireAid website names only 3 Palisades organizations that receive grants. Among almost 120 organizations listed as receiving grants, none of whom are specific to Pacific Palisades, and those 3 are Kehelet Israel, Chabad of Pacific Palisades, and Palisades Charter High School. Others have tried to directly reach out to the Annenberg Foundation. They were kind of given the runaround, various extension numbers, somebody saying they would call them back, no one called back. Also referring them to some mysterious man named Philip, no last name, he was never found. This is just crazy. So essentially what they're doing is taking the $100 million, then paying themselves roughly 70% of it, and then the rest of the money they're dishing out to various other nonprofits with their own administrative expenses, and that's how $100 million just ends up disappearing, allegedly.
Sheesh. At the end of the day, I've got to say, it's good to see people finally waking up. For decades, we've lived under a system soaked in waste, soaked in fraud, soaked in abuse and deception, especially here in California. And it's not just local. This runs deep through the veins of the United States of America, in politics as a whole. The truth is, these politicians have been getting away with it because the people have been too distracted to notice, too busy surviving to see how we're being played. The high taxes, the low wages, the never-ending housing crisis. These are not accidents. These are politically engineered problems. Why? Because the people getting in office aren't there to serve the public. They're there to serve themselves. They run for office, then turn around and funnel our tax dollars into pet projects and backroom deals, all while smiling for the camera, collecting donations from powerful companies and special interests. And the worst part, they do it with impunity because they're the ones writing the rules. But here's the good news. That era is coming to an end. Because the only thing that destroys corruption is exposure. And we're in that moment right now, a time in American history when the lights are being flipped on and the roaches are starting to scatter. Anyway, that's it for today. I am Wolf Kage, and this has been Wolf Kage Los Angeles. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. And until the next time, peace.